Awesome. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We want to welcome everyone to the Supporting Black Educators Diversity and Leadership Charting the Course to Equity Coalition webinar. I'm so happy that you are able to join us. My name is Yasmine-Imani McMorrin. I currently serve as the Director of Advocacy and Stakeholder Engagement for DLI. I am a parent of a teenager. I cannot believe it. I care very deeply about equity, and I'm really thrilled to be in community with you all and to share more about how we're going to show up and support Black educators in LAUSD. I also had my first Black educator when I was in the 4th grade, Miss Alexander. She left a huge impact on my career trajectory, and I'm just so grateful for her presence. And in terms of our webinar, we are going to go over a little background about DLI and the coalition, our local advocacy work, overview of our LAUSD resolution that we're here to chat about tonight, and next steps about how you can support our resolution. We will also have a brief panel discussion. I'm very excited to hear from our panelists, and we'll wrap up with a brief audience Q&A. So I'm going to turn it over to our CEO of Diversity and Leadership, to get us going this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasmine, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to join us to talk about this very important resolution. My name is Dr. Lori McGowan-Robinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Diversity and Leadership Institute. I'll talk a little bit more about why our organization was founded, but I'd like to continue in the same vein as Yasmine-Imani just did and talk about the first time I had a Black educator. My first Black teacher that I remember was in kindergarten, Miss Prince. I remember how compassionate she was. I remembered her love for teaching, and I remember her affirmations of me as one of her students. She was firm, but she was loving, and she expected the best from us. And much like her, my experience of having Black educators I can't recall actually a time where I didn't have access to a Black teacher or a Black administrator or a Black counselor. I was born and raised in the Midwest, and my experience was one that shaped me into the woman that I am today. And I know had it not been for my experiences with that affirmation and really recognizing who I was and the brilliance that I possessed even as a young age, at a young age, that my outcomes may have been very different. So today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the work of Diversity and Leadership Institute. Our organization was founded to address the racial diversity and culturally responsive gap that we see in California public schools. There was a stark contrast when I moved to California and saw the lack of racial diversity among the educator ranks. And I made it a personal mission of mine to figure out how we could increase that pipeline. And the work of Diversity and Leadership Institute, I have the privilege of doing that work every day, allows me to do that alongside our coalition partners who have all pushed in around this effort. So the work that we do, both on the policy and advocacy side and on the practitioner side, because we know that you cannot have one without the other, it's important that we create the conditions for educators of color to thrive in the positions that they have, to ensure that we are retaining, just as we are recruiting, Black and Brown educators across the state of California. I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for educators, specifically Black educators in LA County and statewide. So currently, more than half of schools in California don't have a Black teacher. And according to Education Trust West, which I'm sure Abby will be talking about when we introduce our panel, 78,000 Black students are in schools where there are no Black teachers. And when we look at LA County, only 2% of LA County's teachers are Black males. And there is a generation gap. So right now, where you might see proportionality between Black students and Black teachers, there is a generation gap where we see more educators, more Black educators, specifically in LAUSD, who are nearing retirement and fewer Black educators coming into the ranks. So we are in the midst of approaching a cliff. All right. So we can't just look at where we are, but we also have to look at where we're going. And if we look at a recent study done by RAND, when they ask educators specifically, educators more broadly, how many of them were considering resigning at the end of the 2020 and 21 school year, many of them, the numbers increased from what they would be typically. And for Black educators, they were disproportionately represented in terms of negatively in terms of wanting to leave the profession. So we have a national call here to action, but we also have a local call here that's right in front of us. So I'm excited to talk about a little bit more about specifically the impact that Black educators have and why it's so important that we are recruiting and retaining them. Black students who had one Black teacher between kindergarten and third grade are 7% more likely to graduate from high school and 13% more likely to enroll in college. This is looking at the long run impacts of same race teachers. This was a recent study done. And also, another study that looked at the impact of Black educators found that Black students are less likely to be punished with suspension or expulsion when they have a Black teacher. So these are just two glimpses, and I'm excited for our panel who's going to talk even more about, one, their personal experience as a Black teacher, as a Black parent, but also what the research is telling us in terms of impact and what we're facing if we don't put the actions in place to recruit and retain, specifically retain Black educators. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Yasmine, who will walk us through the opportunity that we have in front of us with this resolution that's on the table at LA Unified School District.
Thank you so much, Laura, and setting that stage for where we're going. Like Laura mentioned, the coalition and DLI set a local advocacy goal to intentionally focus on recruiting and retaining educators of color in leadership and assisting superintendents, principals, and school leaders to better support Black educators. So when the LA Unified board members unanimously adopted the Black Student Achievement Plan last year, the coalition and DLI knew the time was right to support that commitment to Black students even further by investing in Black educators and administrators, which data shows increases Black student outcomes and all student outcomes. This resolution would complement efforts that happened on the statewide level last year, specifically with AB 520, which was later folded into AB 130, and the Education Black Guidelines that specifically support educator diversity in our state. So we're really excited for the specificity of this resolution to really show up and support our Black educators in LA Unified. Next slide, please. So moving on into sort of really getting into the top lines of our resolution. And I do just want to share that if you do want to see the actual language of the resolution, it is on our website, our splash page at supportblackeducators.org. And just for the top lines, the goal of this resolution is to increase the number of Black leaders and administrators, as well as Black teachers, including gender equity, which is very important, to improve the representation, relationships, and student outcomes. The way they'll go about doing this, and the first step, is to ensure that the independent analysis unit will present to the board within 60 days, sort of where they are right now, an analysis of how many years the teachers have experienced, the promotion rates, job satisfaction, or any other factors that might impact Black student achievement. And the purpose of the IAU is to inform and advise the board with objectives and analysis regarding their decisions. So this is what they do, and we're really looking forward to seeing that report. Next slide, please. The third top line that I want to highlight tonight is that the superintendent, or the board, is directing the superintendent to develop and present a strategic plan from that IAU initial report to ensure that this report, the strategic plan, will be in alignment with the Black Student Achievement Plan and board goals that will create cohesion across all levels of the district within 90 days of receiving that report. And so we're hoping to increase the number of Black senior executive leaders and Black administrators, collaborate with community groups, which is incredibly important to so many of our stakeholders and parents, advocate in support of policy related to Black student achievement, and leverage new and existing policy and funding that's been coming down recently from the state to strengthen leadership pathways for Black educators in the district. We are really, really excited about the opportunities with this resolution. I'm going to turn it back over to Laura now to talk about how you can get involved.
Thank you, Yasmine. And we're going to come back to this just in case you miss it while I'm walking through the ways that you can get engaged. So what you can do immediately after this webinar is to sign on to the letter today. You can go to www.supportblackeducators.org. You could also attend an action that we're hosting February 1st in front of Beaudry at LAUSD headquarters, 333 South Beaudry. You can join us there from 9 to 10:30. If you can't make it, of course, it will be socially distanced. We will be wearing masks. If you can't join us and you would feel more comfortable joining our Twitter storm, we invite you to tweet using the hashtag Black Educators Matter. Third, you could share a public comment on February the 8th when it is introduced. And also, you can go to boardmeeting.lausd.net/speakers. Or number 4, you can call your LA Unified board member and leave a message at 213-443-4472. With that, we will shift over to our panel. So I'd like to introduce Abby Ridley-Kerr. She is the Interim Associate Director of Research at the Education Trust West. She leads the research team and serves as point person for the organization's K-12 workforce work around diversifying the state's teachers pipeline. And also Dr. Tunette Powell, she's an activist, a mama of 3 boys. She's a storyteller and a scholar of race, kinship, trauma, racism, and knowledge, whose current research centers on Black families with children in early childhood education and school-induced collective trauma. She currently serves as the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Community at the Mirman School in Los Angeles. Please welcome our panelists.
Thank you so much, Laura, and so grateful for our panelists being here. And so we're just going to dive right in. Let's start with Tunette. Can you share briefly about your background and what brings you to this work?
Yeah, I think, the kickoff of, I'm a mother of 3 sons. And I think that, the role of being a mother is one that I could have never prepared for. And I think especially in the context of education, where it continues to push me, that is the reason for my activism. You have no choice when you are a mother, especially of Black boys. And so, I would say that frames most of my existence, most of my work in education. And so I'm just thankful to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Same question for you, Abby. Can you please share briefly about your background and what brings you to this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a California native, grew up in the Bay Area, and spent my K-12 career in California public schools. So believe deeply in public schooling and education as a tool for equity for students in California. And as a researcher, I come to this work with just a really deep belief in the power of data and the importance of data in telling a collective story for individuals. And also the role that education plays in unlocking political agency and political power for our young people across the state. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to ask this to you both. I guess, Abby, we can start with you and then go to Tunette. So this is, since we're talking about Black educators, when was the first time you had a Black educator and what impact did that have?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate this frame that you bring to every conversation. It's so grounding to start with this question. I think the honest answer, and maybe the root of what we're talking about today, is that I didn't have an impactful Black educator until well into college. And I think that illustrates the gravity of the task we're facing here in LA and in California, right? Like Laura mentioned earlier, that a student can go through their whole K-12 academic career in a California public school without sitting in a classroom with a Black educator. And we saw that in the data, right? Half of California schools don't have a single Black educator, and 250,000 Black students attend a school without a teacher of their same race. So it's a huge problem that we're facing, and that's why this resolution is so important.
Thank you, Abby. Let's go over to Tunette.
Yeah, I think for me, the most important question is, when did my kids first have one? I think that, I grew up in the South and I had a lot of Black educators, but I can remember when I didn't have one and what that impact was like for me. But for my kids, we moved to Los Angeles when my oldest son was about 6 years old, and he got his first Black educator in second grade, and it was life-changing. It was, she had such high standards. I remember her saying when he was in second grade, I'm going to have him do math at sixth grade level, and I'm just going to keep letting him go until he can't go anymore. And it was such a different approach. She is still within the district in LAUSD, but she was absolutely incredible. And then the next year, he transitioned to a teacher that wasn't Black, and it shifted everything. It wasn't that she was a bad teacher, but the approach was different. The expectations were much lower. And I found myself in search of a school where I could ensure that they would have a Black teacher, all of my kids. And so my kids have been attending Baldwin Hills ever since then. So my oldest son got to go there for fourth grade and fifth grade. And my other son, my middle son, has been there since second grade. So he got his first Black teacher in second grade as well. And my youngest son started kindergarten with a Black teacher. It matters so much, right? And I think a lot of times we talk about just what it does to a child, but what does it do to whole families, right? To have a Black teacher and to have a teacher that understands you, that connects with you, that builds with you. I think that's been the most powerful thing, is that if I think about some of the bad experiences that I had when I didn't have a Black teacher, for every bad experience I had, a Black teacher has been healing, not only for my children, but for my family as well.
I want to continue on this vein because I think you're hitting on something important. And the next question is, how do you feel the adoption of the Black Student Excellence through Educator Diversity Preparation, Retention, Resolution would change the experience of Black educators, Black parents, and Black students? And you hit on some of those points, but if there's anything else that you want to share with folks.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, let's just give a shout out to the Black educators everywhere, right? I mean, number one, in a pandemic, but they're still doing it. They've always done it. If you look historically at what Black educators have done, they've always done it in the midst of a struggle, different pandemics, right? Whether it was segregation as a pandemic or the current one that we have. And so I just want to lift up Black teachers in the first place and Black educators in the first place. I would also say that, what excites me and, really thinking about this opportunity that we have is the opportunity for Black teachers to no longer be slept on. Like, even when we think about the ones that we have, right, the 9% that we do have, we're sleeping on them in a lot of cases, that we just have not tapped into who they are. And so I love in the resolution that we have the word collaborate. I think that's such an important word, where we have this opportunity to collaborate with educators, to collaborate with the community organizations that they continue to be part of and that include us. So I think that's important. I also think it's important that there's a line item there where we're talking about their perceptions, where they're able to give that feedback and center their expertise on what is and what is not working. And so it's really, really exciting, because I think that every child deserves a Black educator, especially Black children. And so I'm looking forward to supporting it.
Love that. Thank you so much. Abby, can you speak more from a research perspective on how a policy like the Black Student Excellence through Educator Diversity Preparation and Retention Resolution, that's a mouthful, would have an impact on student outcomes, and also keeping in mind teacher retention as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's been this momentous movement in the last few years to really highlight the research that's out there. And so I think there's a really clear understanding that Black educators matter, and they have a huge impact on classrooms. And we know that schools with Black principals have higher percentages of Black teachers. And we know that that representation of Black educators increases student performance and increases enrollment of Black students in gifted programs, and increases college readiness and graduation outcomes. But the reality is that Black students are less likely to be in a classroom with a Black educator, and they're more likely to be taught by novice teachers. So this dual commitment to recruitment and retention of Black educators is so critical to improving outcomes. I think the beauty of this resolution is it uplifts that research, moves beyond that to lead with the voices from the community, sets measurable goals to increase the number of Black district leaders, administrators, health care providers, teachers, and pushes the district to take tangible next steps and commitments towards recruitment and retention strategies that we know work for Black educators.
Thank you so much for lifting that up. And so I feel like our time together has been so quick, but the last question that I have for you, just given the resolution that's here and that's before us, it was officially, just so everyone knows, it was officially introduced yesterday. There was no discussion, and the discussion will take place on, as Laura mentioned, on February 8th. So given this resolution that is investing in Black student excellence through educator diversity, what is the most exciting component of it? I know that you've lifted up several things that are really exciting and different impacts that's going to have on families and teachers and all these things. But considering, and then I was really grateful that Tunette lifted up just the pandemic and how folks are just being our educators, our folks in our schools are just being tasked to do so much. And we deep appreciation, deep grace, and deep gratitude for all that folks are doing for all of us, for all of our communities and our students. But given all of that, what about this resolution is most exciting for you as we sort of close out our time together in this panel? And I guess we can start with Tunette.
Yeah, I think for me, the centering of Black teachers is extremely important. And I think that, especially in our public school spaces, and I dare say all of education, we have rarely centered Black students, Black faculty and staff, on and on and on. And so just that moment to look at historically, we have been decentered, right? We have been an afterthought. We have been, kind of seen from this negative lens, but to actually center and say, we know that the research shows that every time, that having a Black educator is a better experience for every child. I think that, we are really pushing against some of those mainstream problematic narratives and really being able to say, you know what, we need Black educators. And so, I think the most exciting thing about that is that that connects with the freedom dreams of our ancestors, right? Who fought for public schools at a time when, schools were only thought of to be for white, wealthy, young people, right? And so a lot of times males. And so to be able to attach that together and, really bridge those freedom dreams with where we are today is hopeful. And I hope that we will think about two things because, I saw a quote once that said 10% of what happens is policy and 90% is implementation. I hope that we will think about how we listen first to Black educators and then learn from them. They have so much to teach us. And if we are willing to continue to push against the narratives and listen to them and learn from them, this district will continue to move forward.
Thank you so much. I'm going to write that. That's a solid quote. All right, Abby, go ahead and share with us what's most exciting about this resolution piece to you.
Yeah, to build on that, I think what excites me most is the potential impact this has to affect decisions in districts across the state and statewide. I think there's huge ripple effect potential here, right? LAUSD holds some clout statewide. And we also know that it serves the largest percentage of Black students in the state, right? I love the data point that our friends at Innovate have that if Black students made up a district coming from LAUSD, they'd be the 11th largest district in the state. And I think that's such an impactful data point and really tells the true story of why this is so important and the potential it holds. So I'm excited to see the ripple effect up and down the state we have as we continue to rebuild, reimagine our education system coming out of this pandemic.
Love that. Looking forward to that as well. So we thank you both so deeply for your time. Your perspective was really valuable, and I know that folks deeply appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it back over to Laura. I know we have a poll to share with folks, so I'm going to go ahead and launch that. so we can have some sharing out. But thank you again to our panel. And we'll turn it back over to Laura to close us out.
Thank you, and so excited that we were able to hear from such amazing panelists, and looking forward to the ongoing work. As they both pointed out, this is only the beginning, and there's so much more for us to do. And so I appreciate you both for your time today. So I'm going to shift over to Q&A. We did have if you have any questions, we ask that you share those in the chat. So we're going to give folks time to do that. But while you're doing that, we are going to ask this poll question. So at what age or grade did you have your first Black educator? So go ahead and storm the chat. We'll give everybody a minute to do that. At what age or grade did you have your first Black educator?
We have about 71% participation right now. So we'll give it a couple more seconds for folks to answer, and can share those results with everyone. And if there are any other questions, also now is the time. I'm going to go ahead and just direct folks back over to our campaign site to learn more, see the resolution, sign on to our letter, but wanted to make sure to put that in the chat for folks as well.
Included the slide. So just in case you missed it the first time, there are 4 ways that you can engage. You can sign on to the letter. You can go to www.supportblackeducators.org. We will drop that in the chat for you right now, so you can click on that link and have it in your browser. You can also attend the action to support Black educators in the resolution on February 1st from 9 to 10:30, or tweet online, #BlackEducatorsMatter. Again, that's #BlackEducatorsMatter. And maybe in your hashtag, you can talk about the first time that you had a Black educator. And if you did not, that is important, that you did not have one, and that we want to change that. Also, you can share a public comment on February 8th, the day that the resolution will be voted on, by going to boardmeeting.lausd.net/speaker. Also, you could call LA Unified board members and leave a message, 213-443-4472. So I will go back and revisit our chat to see what questions we have.
Sounds good.
We got Erin who already signed. She went to blackeducators.org, supportblackeducators.org, and she's already signed on to the letter. Thank you so much, Erin.
Awesome.
And if you've done that, share that in the chat too. We want to know. Gets us excited.
Yes. And just to share out some of the feedbacks from the poll, we have 4th grade, preschool, and someone said that's probably why I love school to this day. Someone said 12th grade, 5th grade, graduate school, and 6th grade. So it's sort of a variety of responses, but we know with the implementation of this resolution, our students might have an encounter with Black educators much sooner, and that can definitely have, or will have, an excellent impact on their overall academic career. So very excited about that. And I feel we are just up against our end time. Is there any questions from folks of our panelists or our amazing DLI founder and CEO?
I just want to end by saying how incredible this opportunity is to be in the position to help support our Black educators. We have some incredible Black educators at LA Unified. We want to uplift them, and we want to encourage some of our kids who are in K-12 right now who might want to become teachers, that LAUSD supports you and supports that decision, because you are our future educators. So, and maybe there's somebody else out there right now who might not be in the field of education, but is considering it. So we invite you, we welcome you. We need more Black educators and non-Black educators as well. The education field is suffering right now in so many ways because of COVID-19. So we encourage all educators, particularly our Black educators who want to make a difference, and our aspiring Black educators who want to make a difference. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Take good care, everyone.